All right, let's have a look at my income portfolio that I started July 1st of this year. You can see I have about $8,300 in cash. And today is Saturday, October 18, 2025. So for this income portfolio, I'm using high yield ETFs and a little bit of options. My two biggest holdings are ULTI and NVII. And then I have YEF, TSYY, and MAGI. If you've been following me, I did have a large position considering this portfolio in XBTY. It wasn't just bleeding to death. It got its throat slit and was just gushing blood. So I decided just to liquidate it. Took about $300 loss if you include the dividends that I received. And I had owned it for about 9 or 10 weeks. And also in this portfolio, I have a couple growth funds, QQQ and VU, to help stabilize this position. And you can see I have a pretty big position now in MSTU, 500 shares through options. I got assigned 300 shares overnight last night, which is exactly what I wanted. And my plan is to run some covered calls on those 500 shares. Let's go ahead and take a look at how much income I've made this past week. And there you can see from October 13th through the 17th, grand total of $116 in distributions from those high yield ETFs. And I did end up making $88 in realized option income. But you can see my high yield ETFs, the amount of shares I had in each ETF, and then the distributions, plus what they paid for the week. All in all, not a bad week, a little bit over $200. And then this is my progress since I started in July. You can see started with $98 in dividends. In September, I started playing with options, learning and teaching myself options. And so far in 2025, I've made $275 in realized options income. You can see in September, $239, and then so far in October, about $36. This $481 I'm seeing in October, that includes the $36 in options income. So let's see how I'm getting this $481. Here are my high yield dividends. They all pay weekly. And right here, this is what I guesstimating they're paying monthly. And then here are the numbers of shares I have for each position. If these all come true, I'm going to be getting this amount for each high yield ETF for the month. You add those up, you get about $445. You combine that with the $36 in options I've received, it's about $481. I intend to make hopefully at least another $100 in options for the month of October. And right here is just a little progress report from September through October. You can see this week the 116 versus the third week in September 105. This is going to change because I did liquidate XBTY. I had close to 115 shares. When I did liquidate that for a loss, I put most of that money into NVII. It's not as high yield as XBTY. It's going to keep its NAV. So I am going to go down in distributions for the rest of this month. But you can see my progress from second week to third week. We'll see what the fourth week looks like at the end of next week. You can see $239 in options in September, and so far just the $36 because I did take a little bit of loss playing with put credit spreads earlier in October. And now for the portfolio review, there you can see the $8,300 up $37 today, or 0.45%. For the past week, up 0.56%, or about $46. The past month, with the past couple of weeks being down weeks, at least for this portfolio, down 4.25%, or $368. And then year to date, I'm using that as my all-time, even though I'm about 3.5 months old. I'm down 1%, or about $91. And I take a look at my buying power. No cash right now. I do have some margin. I'm in it for $2,300. Now I have those 500 shares of MSTU. 300 got assigned. I bought 200. And then this past week with Bitcoin pulling way back, I bought $500 at about $107,000 cost. I'll show you that in a little bit, but you can see I'm about 45% above my margin maintenance, or about $3,500. Let's go ahead and start with ULTI, my biggest position, just about 30% of the portfolio, 610 shares. There's my average cost of $6.13. You can see ULTI is sitting at 517. The past 2 or 3 days have not been very good to ULTI, with everything pulling back a little bit. My total return, you can see I'm down $585, or 15%. But if we take a look at this, you can see I've had ULTI for about 16 weeks now. So 16 weeks of data, 16 distributions, $689 versus me being down $585. So I'm a little bit ahead on Ulti, but not by much when you consider taxes, depending on return to capital and all that fun stuff. All right, next up is NVII. Again, I liquidated XBTY. I put most of that money into NVII. So I went from about 17 shares to 66 shares. There you can see my average cost of $30.62. NVII sitting at a little bit over $31. There's my total return of $29 or up 1.42%. This is exactly how we want our high yield ETFs to behave, to be up even a little bit while receiving those dividends. That means those dividends are ours to keep, at least for now. Then I got YETH. This is another crypto ETF from Roundhill. These cryptocurrency ETFs are just getting hammered this past month. You can see my average cost is $28.91. YETH is at $22.50, down 22% or about $100. Luckily, I just have a small position, just the 16 shares. Next up is Maggie. It's still a very small position for me because it's so expensive. Almost $56 a share. You can see my average cost is $56.87. I'm down about 1% or down about $5. I anticipate this to recover and be positive here shortly. Then my last high yield ETF is TSYY. You can see it's sitting at 762. My average cost is $8.31. I'm down about 8% or $44. Now, all these high yield ETFs I have right now, I'm just dripping into them. I'll probably undrip Ulti because I like to use those dividends to spread around to all the other funds and build them that way very slowly. And then to help out these high yield ETFs, I do have a couple growth funds just to help stabilize the portfolio. The first one is VU. You can see I have a little bit over 1.5 shares, almost $1,000 in market value. You can see I want to try and get this probably closer to 10% of the portfolio, but I'm up a little bit over 2% or $21. Then I have a little bit of QQQ, about $800 in market value. You can see I'm up 4.73% or about $36. Again, I want to get this closer to 10%. And then I told you earlier in the video, I used some of my margin to buy $500 of Bitcoin. I think I bought 515 actually. So you can see my average cost in the high 107s, and right now it's sitting in about 107. So I'm down about 0.65% or about $3. What I'm thinking here with this Bitcoin, it's not a long-term hold for me. I want to see it pump back up to 120, hopefully 125. When it gets into that range, I'll be up somewhere between 10, 15, 12%. I will dump it for about a $50 or $60 profit. At least that's my short-term thinking with this position right now. And let's just have a quick look at SoFi. It doesn't pay a dividend, at least I don't think, but I'm kind of bullish on this stock. I anticipate this company doing good things here in the future. Small position, just a little bit over 4 shares. My goal ultimately is to own 100 shares. So I'll be taking some of those dividends from Ulti if I turn off drip from the other ones just to build up SoFi and hopefully get to 100 shares sooner than later. And then my final position is MSTU. The week before last, I bought 200 shares of this stock just to run covered calls on it. It is a leverage product on MSTR or Mr. or Strategy. And I successfully ran $4.50 covered call, earned $22 premium, and realized 100% of it. But then I also ran some put auction to get it at the $4 strike, and they got assigned. Obviously, it finished at 364 or so. So now I have 500 shares, and I anticipate I'm going to run some covered calls on at least 300 of those shares. Right now in the options chain, I want to run the strike of $4.50, but I don't think it's paying a decent premium. So I need to hopefully wait for MSTU to go up at least to $4 to increase that premium. So right now I'll just be holding. Hopefully Mr. is at its bottom, so to speak. I think MSTR sitting at 290 in the low 290s there. They do have earnings coming up at the end of this month, and everything I've been reading and analyzing anticipate MSTR or Strategy to bump up a little bit. So this being a leverage product, it goes 2x either way of MSTR. Hopefully this will pump to $5. I'll run some covered calls, probably on 300 shares again, and then hopefully it'll pump more than that. And 200 shares, I can dump it for profit. So that's my plan with this position of MSTU just to kind of run the wheel, so to speak. And then talking about options, you can see right there, I had 2 plays for the week, a total of about $88 of realized option profit income. The covered call on MSTU, and then I had a couple puts on MSOX that I sold out early and got 73% profit, or $66. And if you click on 3 months, which is all time for me in options, up about $275. This big orange down arrow here, that's me messing around with credit put spreads on Tesla. Learned my lesson on that. We'll keep it simple. Selling puts, selling covered calls for now until I get a little bit better or know a little bit more about these put credit spreads. All right, so there you have it. Just a quick update of what happened this past week. Everything pulled back some. I was able to buy a few things. Again, I went ahead and bought $500 of Bitcoin, and the hope is that it will pump. Right now, we're still sitting at $107,000. You can see my average cost right down here. So who knows what will happen over the weekend through next week with Bitcoin, but I'm hoping it pumps. Folks, thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next video.